All right, we're back and we have a special guest with us today. His work embodies the idea that the ocean is not only a playground, but a place of healing, growth, and transformation. As founder of the MeWater Foundation, a nonprofit that takes kids and families out of some of the toughest environments and gives them life-changing experiences in nature, he's impacted over 5,000 underserved youth in the San Francisco Bay Area since the organization's founding in 2015. He's a YETI ambassador, and you might recognize him from Patagonia's acclaimed documentary, Fish People, where his story of mentorship and the power of the sea inspires audiences worldwide. From a background in social work to building a community rooted in surfing and nature, he has redefined what it means to use the ocean as a force of good. And in 2025, he is steering MeWater into new waves of impact with even bigger plans on the horizon. We have the one and only Eddie Donnellan. Eddie, thank you so much for coming on the lineup today.
Thanks, Dave. That was quite an intro. I appreciate it. I really appreciate it.
100% earned. So where are we talking to you from today? You up in San Fran or?
Yeah, I'm in my super high-end office that's built in my garage here in San Francisco. Ocean Beach, actually. I live right by Ocean Beach.
Awesome. And I mean, we're recording, it's the 1st of October. I don't know about you. Yeah. Autumn's typically kind of my favorite time of year in California. What's your surfing routine been like lately? And, how's it looking over the coming weeks?
Well, where are you? Where are you located again?
I'm in Ventura.
Oh, in Ventura. Yeah. So in San Francisco, I don't know what you know about like the surf scene, seasons, but it's typically like this is when it starts, like October-ish, and goes until like March. So it's like a 5-month, so somewhere around there, 5, maybe 6 month surf window where it gets good, but it generally starts right now. And there's been some good days, like a couple, like, nothing like truly cracking yet, but there's been some fun surf for sure.
That's good to hear.
Yeah.
We mentioned, MeWater, you founded it in 2015. So this is the 10-year anniversary of the foundation. Yeah. For those who might not be familiar with the work, tell us what it is and what the mission is.
So MeWater is the mission of MeWater is to get kids outside into Mother Nature, exposing them to all of the magic that occurs, and that starts when they get to the beach or when they get into the mountains or wherever we are that we're taking them. And we use surfing and the ocean and just like immersion in the water as a conduit to do a lot of that. So a lot of the kids that we take, they've never been surfing or a lot of them have actually never been to the beach or never had kind of like the resources or the access or however you want to name that to safely get into the water, and just kind of experience it on their own terms. So we're not, the nonprofit, the organization is not like a surf school. It's like, hey, here's this place, here's this, and here's this opportunity to experience this place. I would say the best way to describe it is on your own terms. So like you want to go body surfing, you want to just play, you want to surf, you want to boogie board, you want to build a sandcastle, you want to just check it. So it's like, it's not a performative surf experience unless that's kind of what they're into or that's kind of where they're, I guess where their personality is or where they're like striving to be. Some kids might show up and they just want to surf. Other kids might show up and they're not sure. And they're certainly not sure about whoever I am or whoever, whoever we are. So there's that. And then there's like, well, I don't feel comfortable going in the water. But the really magical thing about that is that a lot of times those are the kids that at the end of the day, those hesitant ones, those are the kids that we have to, gently say it's time to go or, hey, time's up or, we got to go. And I think that, that in essence is what it's about. It's about like just opening up this channel of like, I would say, because I view the ocean surfing for me and as it began as like this amazing healing place for things that, that got me away from anything that I was dealing with. And as a young teenager and things like that, coming from what my home life was and whatnot. And then surfing was like this thing where I was like, whoa, like, and, it changed my life. And I'm not saying we're changing every kid's life by taking them surfing, because that would be like, that's very unrealistic. However, if you think about a kid, this is a really long answer to your question.
No, I love it. Keep going.
If you think about a kid who's never been in the ocean and then comes to the ocean and goes in the ocean and rides a few waves and overcomes all these things, right, that are right there in front of them, meaning fear, anxiety, and all these things that have to do, like, as we overcome fear in life, like, that's a healing thing. Like, that's a healing activity when you're overcoming things. So I think that's the goal, is to like help these youth and their families, because we take a lot of families too, and expose them to this opportunity to come outside, be in Mother Nature, and heal in their own on their own terms. And I think that's the best way to describe it.
Yeah, it's really well said. And it's like surfing, it's not a monolith. It means different things to different people. And so often at our work, in our day jobs, like, we're dealing with people probably at like one end of the experiential spectrum. A lot of them are sort of dynastic surfers. Their dad surfed or their grandfather surfed, or, they grew up in it. They've been putting stickers on their boards since they were, in diapers, basically. And it's not a knock on any of that, but there is, and I'll speak from personal experience too, there is a version of getting jaded a little bit, just to how special it is that you get to go in the ocean. And as you pointed out, like, whether it's to surf or just to experience it at your own speed. And, I've volunteered at surf schools in the past. My kids are 11. I'm kind of experiencing this all over again, like just getting them out there. And I think what the MeWater Foundation does, and for those who haven't checked it out, like check out the content. It taps into something that is universal for all surfers, regardless of wherever they are in the spectrum, right? Where it's like, it's just an amazing transformative escape to get out in the ocean and ride some waves, or just experience some waves.
Yeah. That's really well said. I think you mentioned, like, all of us, as you mentioned the word jaded. And I think that's a fair assessment of most of us, myself included, a lot of times in your own surf experience, right? Your own, like, oh, how are the waves? Oh, I thought they were going to be good. Oh, right. Oh, I didn't get the one, whereas like MeWater, like, kind of every wave is the one, you know what I mean? Like, every wave you're sharing with a kid, and you're on the back and you're watching them, and, they're scared. But that, like, to them, that's the one, that's the thing. And they're the lights kind of go on. And, for those of us that have been surfing for a long time, those lights might click on, at least for me personally. I guess I can only speak from my own experience. Those lights might go on a couple times a month, a couple times a year, it just depends. Right. But with this, like, you're able to kind of, remove the filter, so to speak. Like, we all have our filter of, like, of what we think it should be or what we think it's going to be, or, and a good example of that is, like, we do a lot of events, and, we're up here in, San Francisco, where the weather is, it varies a lot. Let's just say, like, it's not like sunny, beautiful blue offshore all the time at all, and so a lot of times we'll show up to events and it'll be like gloomy, gray, cold, and you can just feel, like, even between us adults, that we're just kind of like, okay, here we go, we're going to go for it, but then the kids get out there and they don't see any of that. They don't have that filter, which is like, and over the years of doing this, like, that's rubbed off on me a ton, like, I still get stuck, where I'm just like, oh, I missed it, or, right. But not really, not like I used to before, like, and I think also a lot of that comes with getting older and but not for everyone. Like, I have plenty of friends, people I know that are my age, and oh, it's just such a downer, right? Surfing sometimes, and you're like, really? Like, is surfing really a downer? Like, I mean, sometimes behavior from others can be a downer in the ocean, and that's fair, I think, but surfing's like such a rad thing to do, like and to share that as like what I do is, that's it's incredibly uplifting just to like as a straight answer, that it's incredibly uplifting that I have the privilege of doing that. And, I'm making that seem super easy because there's a whole nother part of this that is super challenging in regards to running a nonprofit, and we can explore that. But there's the reality of that too,
of course.
That's not as like, it's not all like, it's not all, glory for sure.
Right. I like how you put it, like as like sort of a core, like an everyday surfer, like maybe you only get, your light switched on like a few times a month or whatever. And that's not, there is a version of that coming from being jaded, but it's also just like surfing can be exhausting, where you're like chasing that sandbar, or that tide and that swell direct, and I'm like, God, but I think like across that spectrum, I think all of us, even like elite world champions, like when you're helping someone else get waves, especially like people that haven't experienced it a lot or ever before, it's every wave the light gets switched on, where you're just so stoked that someone's like experiencing that. And we mentioned MeWater's in its 10th year, like, and we're in October of 2025. What have been some of the standout points for you? I mean, I guess highlights or even lowlights if there's been challenges in 2025 for the MeWater Foundation for you.
Well, this past year, it was a more typical year for us, meaning that, we, in the past, historically, we've done some kind of more radical stuff with our kids and with the organization, where we've gone traveling and exposed kids to like completely different, worlds per se. So this year was a more, atypical, just like we're firing away. We're doing stuff up and down the coast. I just got back last week from doing a day down at Hollister Ranch, which is a really neat place to be. And to do this type of work there is pretty magical. And so we've just been kind of chipping away this year at doing what we're doing. And that's not because of anything else other than, sometimes you, and this speaks more organizationally, sometimes you set a goal on wanting to achieve something. And like, for whatever reason, there's things that happen that prevent that from happening, so to speak. And not that so it's been a great year, a fantastic year. We're on target with, again, like it gets back into like numbers and all that stuff, but on target to serve the same amount of kids we do every year. And then, so what happens at least with me as in my role, is that then I go, okay, well, like, I want to make, I want to kind of up it again. I want to kind of flip the switch a little bit again. And I think, there's also like the reality of financial situations with organizations from a business perspective of like, okay, here's what we can do. Here's what we want to do. And the cool thing is that we didn't set out to do anything that we didn't do. And so that's a win, like in a lot of ways. But, we'll talk maybe more a little bit about what we have kind of on the kind of like what we're looking forward to do coming up, which is some pretty cool stuff.
Yeah, of course, and that's a good segue, because I do want to get into that, but we will take a quick break to get a word in from our sponsors. And when we come back, we'll do some bio stuff. And then I definitely want to finish with forward-looking stuff on the MeWater Foundation.
Yeah, all good.
All right, we'll be right back. All right, we're back. I am Dave Prodan here with Eddie Donnellan of the MeWater Foundation. Eddie, you mentioned you're talking to us from your home in Ocean Beach, but I want to wind the clock back a little bit. Like, were you born and raised there? Where did you come from? And I guess, what was your journey to becoming a surfer when you started?
So I'm in Ocean Beach. I've lived here at Ocean Beach for about 35 years. I was born in San Francisco. So I lived in San Francisco till I was about, I think 5.5, or almost 6. I went to kindergarten here, and then I was raised by my mom. My dad left our family at an early age, and around that time we moved over across the Golden Gate Bridge into Marin County, where I went to elementary school and middle school and high school. I moved back to Ocean Beach I moved back into San Francisco when I was somewhere around 20 and a half, 21, and now I'm very old, so you can do the math there. But yeah, so I've lived here for a really long time, and my mom was a huge influence on my life and also like on what I'm doing today. A huge, massive influence.
Yeah.
She was, go ahead. Sorry.
No, please.
Yeah. So my mom was an immigrant, and when I was born, my mom didn't speak English. My mom didn't speak English until I was about however many years old. And, as I mentioned, my dad left. And so my mom had to kind of do things the hard way, like the really hard way. But she ended up going into becoming an educator, and which eventually led her into becoming an English as a second language educator. So as a kid, I had a lot of exposure to other cultures, like as deep as like with families living with us, and some pretty radical stuff as a kid. Like, at the time when I was a kid, like I wasn't that stoked on sharing rooms, with like people that weren't, it was an interesting upbringing. But mixed with that, she really liked to travel. And so we did some really kind of low budget traveling in third world countries. So I got really, I had a really unique upbringing in that way, like taking trains places and, doing things, not staying in nice places. And I think just her general way of operating rubbed off on me eventually, even though as a young adult and like teenager, I think I tried to like go the opposite way with myself, but eventually, and it's really interesting actually, eventually I just kind of turned into my mom, in a lot of ways. I think I'm just really proud of that in the sense that like I held on to the things that I felt were just really important. And because I also saw with my mom, I saw with somebody that gives and gives and gives, I saw the downside of that as it impacted her and as people took advantage of her and things like that. But the long story short is I basically turned into my mom. And I've lived here at Ocean Beach since I was just under 21. So it's over 30 something years.
Yeah, I'm 42, and the cellular memory thing with like parents and relatives, where it's like, I'm like, oh no, I'm not that. And then like every day I'm like, oh man, that's very much like what I remember my parents being like in a way. But sometimes there's a cellular memory thing, but I think there's also just like good, bad, and ugly. I think sometimes we just through osmosis see the good sometimes, and we're like, well, even subconsciously, I want to build that into my life.
Yeah, I think that's the ideal, is that you take the good and then you don't, and then you're not you're not like, if there was bad, let's just say, if there was bad, because a lot of the,
no one's perfect,
my work has been really about, I've worked in children's mental health for a really long time. So I've seen a lot of that, of like behaviors recycling, repeating themselves.
Right.
And the ideal is what you just said, is that you're like, especially as a parent, like you got young, kids that age, and you're just like, yeah, I don't, like, here's what I remember that worked, or that was cool, or, however you want to frame it. And so, because it's so important in life that, you're holding on to the good and running with it, right? Because if you do the opposite, there's a real downside to that.
Totally. You mentioned, at one point, I think you mentioned like teenage years, you were trying to pursue a path that was a departure, right, from that. Can you talk to us a little more about that and what that involved and how you kind of came back to where you're presently at?
Yeah. So I think, I didn't realize it as much when it was happening, but having your dad leave, or like having my dad leave,
right,
had a lot of impact on me as a kid, and there was anger there involved. And the interesting thing about surfing was that I was a jock growing up. Like, I loved sports. I played all the sports. And then I got a little bit into skateboarding, and because I skateboarded, I love skateboarding. And so, but I was skateboarding one day at this, like, skateboarding some curb, and this kid came up and he started skateboarding with me. Skateboarding's like that. It's like, you just start skating next to the guy that's skating. And I don't know, eventually we started talking. And so he had just moved here from Hawaii, and we had like a 15-minute conversation that that's how long I remember was. And he's like, "Hey, do you surf?" And I was like, "No, I don't surf." I was like 14.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Well, do you want to come surfing?" And it was that 15-minute conversation literally that changed, I mean, you can say like surfing changed my life, but that made me a surfer, like that conversation right there. And I found a lot immediately in the ocean. Like, I found a place, I think, where it was just, it was so simple, like, you've got to figure out how to do this, and you got to figure out how to catch the wave, and and it's really hard. And, and the beaches that I was learning to surf in are the worst beaches to learn to surf in, like, ever. They're just like pounding beach break, like closeouts. But I loved it. And so I think, I've held on to that. I've held on to surfing, I've surfed since then. And as I started working in children's mental health, so I worked in residential treatment, which for those people that don't know what it is, and it's really intense. I was working in a really high level care, residential treatment for kids who have been, traditionally it was like foster care youth who had like blown out of every possible placement. And so the level of facility was like basically on par with like juvenile hall or like psychiatric incarceration, psychiatric hospitalization, sorry. And so it's really intense. I mean, really intense. But what spawned the whole idea for MeWater was that we used to take those kids camping up in the redwoods.
Yeah.
And as soon as we got them up there, and I'm talking about really gnarly behaviors like violence. I mean, everything you can think of. These kids, their behaviors would just go like, they would just like drop, and they'd get to this point, and it was like mind melting to me. Like it was so, it was incredible. And so, so I worked at this agency called Edgewood, and we were allowed to take kids to the beach. Because I started there as a counselor. We were allowed to take kids to the beach, but we couldn't put them in the water. And then I was always kind of breaking the rules a little bit, and, as it goes. And so those two worlds collided eventually. And I was, it just seemed like a great idea to start a program a very good friend of mine, Tim Graw, had already been taking kids surfing. So I talked to him. I'm like, hey, what do you think about, starting a nonprofit, which, we can get into that. But it was a pretty far out idea for somebody, because at that point, like I had moved, I was like an administrator. I was a director at the agency. And so it was, I was doing, anyway, so we started it and I was doing both for a long time, and it was really challenging, cause I also have a family, and,
right.
We could get more into that, but.
Yeah, no, I'd love to. I just want to touch on what you said before, just about your mind being kind of blown apart by taking these kids that had pretty severe behavioral problems, and once they were far enough out in nature that they just kind of shed those. And I'm not a religious person, so don't take this the wrong way, but there's that saying, there's like, there are no atheists in the foxhole kind of thing, right? And I think there's something to that, where it's like, when humans, almost regardless of background, like are tapping that natural source, like there is like a communal experience, where it's like, well, I'm out here like maybe further away from civilization than I've ever been, or I'm in the lineup here, and this is maybe the most alien environment on the planet for human beings. It is like transformative in a lot of ways, and it feels like there would have been a lot of parallels between that experience and then the founding of MeWater.
Yes, a direct hit. Because we also, so the same campground that I used to take the residential kids up to, we still, every summer, we go up there 4 times a summer and do like 3 or 4 nights up there in the woods with kids who have never been camping, kids never been surfing, and we do all of it. We camp and surf, and you see it. I'm going to sound so cliche in a lot of the things I say, but it is like freaking magical, the kids, because they've got no phones, there's no cell service. They're going surfing during the day, and then like 2 hours later, they're like hiking in the redwoods, and everything, like you just see it, right? Because they have to be, again, this is so cliche around mindfulness, but they have to be present.
Yeah.
Because it's in an environment that they've never been in, or if they've been in, it's always changing. Like that environment, like the ocean, is always changing. So they have to be like focused. They have to be looking around. They have to, if they're with one of us, they have to know where we're at. They have to, and the questions you get during those moments are just, they're like the purest form of this combination of like excitement, joy, fear, and then when can I do it again?
Right.
Like okay, can we do another one? Or at the and then at the end of the day, when are we coming again? And you're just like, to be a part of that, I think is, it's uplifting, and it's not, again, it's. People might be great, you take kids surfing, but when you're taking, it's the same feeling I had as that kid. However, I'm not trying to compare myself to these kids who, a lot of the kids that we work with are coming from environments that are, I'm not saying all of them, but however, like a lot of trauma in their neighborhoods, a lot of trauma in their environments, a lot of, there's just a lot going on. And again, I'm not trying to compare myself. However, that North Star that's achieved is identical, because it's just like, when can I go again? And I think that's, again, it's a privilege to be a part of all that.
It kind of tracks back to what we were saying in the first segment about getting your light switched on. And, it actually, 2025, depending on what your situation is, it's not always the most inspiring timeline maybe in human history, but like it does, like, I'm not loud.
I'm sorry.
No. Hey,
you're right.
What's the Kurt Vonnegut quote? Like, there's 2 responses to trauma. You can either cry or you can laugh, and there's less cleaning up to do with crying, right? Mm-hmm. But the point being is, like, probably for people like you and myself, where we're of a similar age, and we experience getting our hair blown back by these experiences when we were younger. We've all gone through kind of the digital information age of social media and phones, et cetera. It makes me feel a little bit optimistic that experience still blows kids' hairs back, and it does feel like there is even broadly like a rejection of like, I want to be online all the time and my social media identity is my actual identity, because it's like the real world still is such a potent experience, right? In a lot of ways, I'm sure, for, as you pointed out, like it's not all roses doing what you do. But there's probably moments like that where you're like, that makes me feel a little bit better about maybe the future of humanity in some ways.
Yeah, I think, it's spot on. It's like if you have this place where you can go and it's going to bring you smiles, or it's going to uplift your spirit, it's going to make you feel better for whatever reason, that's a good thing, like MeWater is so it's a small little team with a massive amount of output, but that output, meaning like what we're doing and the stuff that we're doing, it's really community based. So we have a ton of people that volunteer their time that come out. So it's like like we'll have anywhere from like 10 to 15 volunteers for each group, if not more, depending on the size of the group. And, to tap into what you were talking about, we have kids that come out, like kids in the community, like high school kids in particular, that come out and are a huge part of what we're doing. And that was kind of an inorganic process. Like it was an organic process as to how that happened. And that's a whole nother chapter of MeWater that I never really envisioned per se. Like I was never like, oh, there's going to be all these high school kids that are going to love this and they're going to donate, they're going to volunteer. And then a lot of them end up working with us, because there's nothing like that peer-to-peer connection. So like a high school kid helping another younger kid or a kid their age is much different than like me per se, or me or Tim or the staff that work for us, because they can relate in a different way, right? Like they can be like, they'll listen to them in a different way. And, and there's kids that have worked for MeWater and volunteered for MeWater that, you mentioned something about like, feeling like there's hope, or there's like, I like there's that phrase like the kids are all right.
Right. Yeah.
It's an old phrase, but like I've regained a massive amount of hope based on my interaction with today's youth that aren't the kids that we're serving per se as much, or they are, but it's also like these kids that have come in and have really helped shape the trajectory of MeWater in a way that I never envisioned. And there's too many of them to list to say their names, but the kids that are out there that have contributed to MeWater and continue to contribute to MeWater have given me a massive sense of hope in like that we're going to be okay moving forward from seeing how they operate, because I know, and I tell them all the time, I was never, and this is a totally true statement, I was never doing stuff like this when I was your age.
Yeah.
I was never as cool as you are, in the sense of like, not cool from like, having the cool clothes or whatever, but like, I was never devoting my time per se as you are to making the world a better place in the ways that you are, and I think, that gives me like goosebumps almost to say and to be a part of, because I think that is so neat. Yeah,
no, that's awesome. You mentioned you have a family. I've got family members that are sort of youth advocacy attorneys and social workers, and I've talked to them a lot. It's hard not to take your work home with you. sometimes. Yes. And, as we said, like it's 2025, it's not the easiest time just to exist to begin with. But, insofar as you're comfortable sharing, like what's been your experience in having a family and working in the arena you do, like the pros and cons of that?
That's a really good question. And I'm totally willing to share. I think when I was working in residential treatment, it was impossible for me not to bring my work home. Like impossible. So much trauma and so much chaos. And, you have to, in an ideal world, you're able to like, I don't know, come home, turn it off, and, when your heart is connected to the work that you're doing, it's bound to have, and when it's that intense, you're bound to have negative, it's bound to hit you differently at different times, but it's really hard to get rid of. It's really hard to like compartmentalize, so to speak, and put it over there. And then, okay, I'll come back to it in the morning. It's impossible. And for me, I think that, having kids actually was one of the first steps for me in realizing that I needed to figure out a way to not have that impact me so much, because I needed to be present. Because having a, again, this is a little bit personal. Well, it's a lot personal, but like being a dad to me, based on the fact that my dad left, was a big deal. It was a big, like, I cannot repeat that behavior. I need to be, it was really overwhelming. And I mean, I think being a dad is the biggest job you can have in the world. And, I just think that. I think that, people that I respect the most in the world aren't like these heroes or these or this or that, or it's like people that I know that are incredible parents, and I think, because I think it's like, that's how you shape, that's the most important job you have. So anyway, sorry, I'm getting a little lost.
No, I appreciate it. Yeah.
It's really, really important. And so that began the process. Cause like I said, I was doing both jobs. Cause when MeWater started, it was really, it's hard. It's messy. It's like, you're relying on, the first 3 or however many years was all donated time. So then at a certain point, and this goes back to kind of what I said about my mom, at a certain point, the well runs dry, the well of giving, and something's got to give, and usually what gives is your own life, your own relationships, your own connections. And I think what, when there was finally the opportunity, or I finally had the guts, so to speak, to say, I want to do MeWater full time, and I want to leave this other work behind. As much as I love that work, but 22 and a half years of doing that was a lot. And that really began the journey for me of being able to leave it behind. Like, cause now, like, I have stressors that are different than what I used to do. It's operating in a nonprofit organization is, it's not easy.
Right.
And you're going to make a ton of mistakes, which I have. And I probably will continue to do. But like, the cool thing I think about MeWater is that it's always been focused on the kids and on this opportunity that we're creating for them. But all the other stuff that goes into that is challenging. Like, it just is. The optics on like social media or on a website aren't accurate as to what like it really takes to operate a nonprofit business, or any business really, right? But
of course,
I can only speak from my own experience. But it's an interesting It's been an interesting experience. Doing it full time was the best thing that I've done for myself. And that goes back to your question about like what, being able to leave stuff at home.
Yeah.
Because it's especially for givers.
Of course. Which you learned from your mom,
Well, yeah, but it's not like you can, thank you. That's so true. Because what I learned from my mom was, to live this way of like service or however I want to talk about what I'm doing, but to be careful with your boundaries. And I think it's really about boundaries and setting boundaries when it comes to like feelings and heart and human nature and helping others is really hard. Like, when do you stop helping? At what point are you like, well, it's only so much we can do. Because with MeWater, we do a lot more than just, take kids surfing. We're doing a lot to help the families in a lot of different ways. And to help kids as they get older. Like this year, we just started a scholarship program. So I guess I didn't mention that when you talked about 2025.
Yeah.
We gave out 3 college scholarships this year that we're going to stick with the kids for their college careers.
Amazing.
That's a big deal.
Yeah.
And, but yeah, so going back to the question, it's just, I think it's boundaries and that can take a lifetime,
Right. It's beautifully said. And I mean, I'm, the same thing. It's like, it's like, man, I didn't actually finish processing my own childhood. Now I'm a dad. Now I have to, or I have to start, right? In a lot of ways with processing it, because I got to figure this out real quick. But go on, please.
No, that's so true, because I think a lot of people, I think it's not uncommon to step into the role of being a parent without even like acknowledging kind of the things that that may have happened to you or that your experiences. And I'm not like always, I don't mean to say like everybody's had some like terrible thing at all, but I'm saying like who you are, like your childhood and your upbringing shape who you are. Like there's just no, like, that's just how it is. Right. So like along the way, like there's things that have happened that, it's really important that you acknowledge and pay attention to those things.
Really well said.
Yeah.
I've been enjoying this conversation so much, and you're so well spoken and
Thanks.
just genuine too, which it doesn't surprise me that, through your work and through just who you are as a person, that, brands like Patagonia and YETI have come to you for partnerships. And can you talk to us just a little bit about those relationships and what they work, how they kind of work from your perspective?
Well, I'll start with YETI, because that's the reason that I'm sitting here with you. I mean, so I was in Santa Barbara doing a MeWater event at Gaviota Beach. You know where that is?
Yeah.
And it was like one of those days that's, all of our days are really cool. Like there's just all kinds of magic that happens and it's all smiles and all that, cliche stuff again. But this day was one of those days where it's like sunny and there was like these like 75 to 100 yard little ripe peelers coming in, and kids were just getting like, and there's like a channel there. So like there's kids in the channel screaming and I was doing the day with Keith Malloy, who you've had on here before, right?
Yeah. Keith's great.
And Bobby Martinez. And so we're out there and it was just, I mean, sometimes you're able to sit back in my role and like, you just look at it and you're like, holy, this is insane. And just randomly, this is a really long answer to the YETI thing, but
go for it,
just randomly, Mike Baggies was on the beach with his family, and I can't remember. Like I think he might have gone up to Keith and he was like, "Hey, what is going on? Like, what is this?" And anyways, he introduced us, and Mike was, dude, Mike is such a rad guy, man. Like, And I'm not just saying that at all, because that guy is so solid. And so he was like, hey, do you, this is amazing and whatnot. And he's like, do you ever need anything, just let me know. And I was like, sure, whatever. Yeah, cool. Like, and Mike sent a bunch of stuff up to us, and that began the relationship. And it was never like, hey, here's some stuff. Here's what I want from you,
Right. Yeah.
Which is really been my experience 100% with YETI, where they're just like, dude, what you are doing is so cool that we are so psyched on what you're doing.
You're totally right. Bags is like super solid. And I mean, we appreciate like all our partners as well, but it's extra nice sometimes where it's like, oh, they make really like good products too. Like I'm going to use this every day anyway.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, like on the YETI side of things, is there something that you think of immediately where it's like, that's my everyday, or even something that through the program, the kids are going like, man, that thing's amazing.
Oh, Dave, I could, well, let's start with the program. We give our kids, a lot of times we give them the water bottles. And they have like the MeWater logo on there.
Yeah.
And the smiles that brings to these kids, because water bottles are, you have kids, right? And so all these little things that to us when we were kids didn't exist,
right.
Oh, what kind of water bottle that is, or what kind of, I could go on and on, what's that hoodie? Yeah.
Right,
and, but you give those water bottles to kids, and it's so rad because the kids, they hold on to them, and then if they come back to the event, they're all, yeah, look, MeWater, and that, that just brings an endless smile to us, because when anything that can make a kid smile in my life is gold, like a wave, a water bottle, anything. And YETI's a big part of that. Like YETI, their support is huge for us in so many different ways. And a lot of that, when I speak about Mike too, about Bags, I'm talking about Bags as a human being, cause he is he is just so spot on with his being a human, and I think we should all, I think being a cool human is still pretty cool.
I think there's more of a premium on it now than ever for me. If you're a cool human, way
totally.
to go. Well, that's great.
But then also for it, as it pertains to YETI, like we do these overnight camping trips,
right? Yeah.
And I don't know what we used to do before we got, and that's a funny thing too with YETI is like, I don't know how I used to operate. And it sounds so like privileged to say that.
Sure.
But they're coolers, because we'll go for 4 days, 3 nights with the same ice, feeding 40 people, 30 kids for 4 days and 3 nights, all in the same coolers. And so that is like magical. Like because it takes so much logistically to operate a 4 day, 3 night camp up in the redwoods away from stores and all that.
Yeah.
And if you know that the ice, that the hamburgers are going to be cold, you're good, and right. and again, I don't know what we used to do before. We used to go on ice runs, big difference. So yeah. And then
amazing.
With Patagonia, so friends of mine, Jeff Johnston and the Malloy brothers, they were involved with Patagonia many years ago. And so I guess I got engaged with them with Patagonia kind of through proximity to them and friendships with them, which led to the former director of surf, Jason McCaffrey, seeing what I was doing, not in the water, because that's not, that's their world. But with MeWater and stuff. And so that began that relationship. And that's continued. they've done some really cool stuff for our program, like really neat layers of support. Again, just kind of like same type thing, like, love what you're doing, keep doing it, which, I don't think that exists a lot in a lot of worlds, like that. It's just like, hey, we love what you're doing, like, what do you need? And you're like, well, especially for such quality brands,
Right. And it's also, it feels like when that's done right, like, and it is not like it's not a gimmick. It actually feels like that kind of stuff has actually like commercial legs too, from like a storytelling and a brand affinity standpoint. And so it's not just, I think sometimes in the past people would look at it and be like, that's charity. But it's like, it's not actually, because it's accretive to what that brand stands for and actually makes their story that much more impactful, which does have an impact on their bottom line in a positive way. But that's great. And I think it's totally well-deserved.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. I think too, like, it's well beyond at this point, like the optics of what like supporting MeWater looks like for, you know what I mean? Like, and I get that too, like, to be fair, I mean, I'm not, but there's integrity. I think that's the word, like with those brands, in my experience, again, there's integrity to the relationship. And I think that, going back to being a cool human or a nice person, I think that again, as it should, has legs, has like, that makes things, it just makes things better, and it's very two-sided, if that makes sense too. Like, it's not one-sided. It's not like, hey, I need this, or, because it's, you always want to be like, hey, what can I be doing? From my perspective, it's more like, what can I be doing more of,
Totally.
And and then to hear like, what, just keep going. That's pretty huge.
It's great to hear. We're going to take one more quick break to get a word in from our partners. And when we come back, we're going to find out what is next from the MeWater Foundation. We got some listener questions and the lightning round. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back to the lineup. I'm Dave Prodan here with the MeWater Foundation's Eddie Donnellan. Eddie, I've so enjoyed this conversation, and we're October 2025. When you look at the MeWater Foundation through the rest of this year and into 2026, like, what are some things that you've got your eye on, plan-wise or project-wise?
Well, there's always going to be like kind of more of the same response. And then like for those that, that maybe this is an introduction of what we're doing, like we've done some pretty cool stuff, which is way kind of outside the box, more like creating really radical experiences for our kids. Like a couple years ago, we went, for 2 years, we went up to Yakutat, Alaska to help, there was a surf club being formulated up there to help teach the native youth up there, the tribal youth, how to surf, be safe in the water. And so we brought kids up there to do that. Last summer, we did an exchange with, not last summer, meaning like 2024. We brought kids out to New York City, out to Rockaway, and did an exchange with a really incredible program out there called the Laura Bea Collective. And they're doing really neat work. And so we did an exchange where they came out here and enjoyed California. And so I'm hoping, I've got 2 ideas that, I have a board of directors that I have to like, that's who my boss is at this point in this relationship. So I have to like present ideas to them, and then, what are the finances and how would that look? And so I'm really hoping that we can take kids somewhere tropical next summer, or maybe even down to do something in northern Baja. So I'm talking about bringing, San Francisco youth that are engaged in our program and traveling with them to somewhere far away, so to speak, and getting immersed in whatever's going on there, both the community and like the water, but more like, I think I'm getting a little bit out there with my answer here, but like traveling for me personally, and I think for most people, really helps shape their lives in a lot of ways that maybe things wouldn't have been if they hadn't traveled. At the very least, it teaches us how to engage with others in a way that's completely different because we're way outside of our box and our community and our safety net. And I think that what MeWater, so it's like an extension of what MeWater is all about, which is like allowing kids to like experience something that they otherwise probably wouldn't have had the chance to do in a safe and intentional way, and taking that and transferring it to like traveling. Because to me, that would be like if we could do like 2 trips a year where we just kind of like, okay, well, where are we going next? And what are we going to do there? And, so that's a big part of what we're hoping to do this next year is, we got to work through a lot of logistics, but I do have, I have kind of like some connections in both places that could easily, turn into like into it actually happening. Cause it's never like, oh, we just want to go to here. It's more about going somewhere and connecting with people, because that's what this is all about, is human connection. And like, for example, the kids that we brought to New York, they're still connecting with the kids that they met in New York. The kids that we brought, the kids that we brought to Alaska, like those are still relationships with those kids that would have never happened. And that's, there's so much to be said about that.
That's awesome. And for listeners out there that want to learn more about the MeWater Foundation or get involved or support even financially, like where's the best place for them to check it out?
Well, I think website, which is MeWaterFoundation.org. And then social media, if you have any questions, like I'm happy to answer any questions and all questions. And, we do work currently here in the Bay Area, and we go down as far as, like I just mentioned, Santa Barbara. I'm going back down to Santa Barbara in a couple weeks. And I was just down at Hollister doing some work with the youth down there. And, but yeah, we're really open to anything. And also, like, if anybody out there has dreams of, or aspirations of, following their passions and like, to make something happen, better in the world, I'm always open to meeting with people or discussing that. 'Cause that's what this really is for me, is like, this vision. And then, finally taking the, I think having the like, I don't know, just like letting go of like, what if it doesn't work? Because nothing will ever work if you don't try, so I think that's a really important part of my message, is that this is a byproduct of me not saying like, oh, I don't know, like it'll never work, right. It doesn't work, it's like I tell my son, who's really into basketball, he's a really good basketball player, well, if you don't take the shot, you don't know. And I think that's like some NBA player that I don't know who it is, but a long time ago.
Yeah, I like that. It reminds me of like, people either think they can or they can't. And the truth is both are right. If you think that, like, kind of thing. So it's a good way.
Yeah, that's really good. I like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, man, I so appreciate everything you're doing, and I recommend everyone check out the MeWater Foundation. I know I'm going to be looking into it a lot more. Before you go, Eddie, we did put out a feeler for questions from the folks at the Lineup Pod.
I saw that. I'm nervous.
Man, we got a lot back for you, buddy, but we've whittled it down to 3.
Okay.
And the first question is from Adam Wormington, who says, "Yo, Eddie, what is the biggest lesson you've learned from these amazing kids?"
Oh, wow, that's a good one. Adam Wormington, I submitted one of the videos. He's one of the filmmakers, and he's been a contributor for us. He's a really good guy and a really talented filmmaker. It's going to sound like so simple, but it's really like try new things and don't give up, because we see it all the time. I see it all the time with the kids. They show, like I said, I kind of painted the picture earlier. They show up to the beach, and they're like, what is this? This is no, and like I said, that's the kid that we have to pull out of the water sometimes. I mean,
right.
Gently pull out of the water. But, I can't say that I would have done that when I was a kid,
Right.
And that's the lesson, even as a grown adult, don't, and it goes back to don't not give yourself a chance, you deserve it.
Great answer. Next question is from Jack Basilata, who asks, and this is, I'm personally interested too, what is your favorite burrito in San Francisco?
Well, I'm glad we shifted the tone there a little bit.
We'll shift it back. Don't worry.
Yeah, I know. There's probably some good ones in there. I love La Taqueria down on Mission. It's kind of the old school. It's been there forever. Unfortunately, it gets touted on all the, best in San Francisco, but it really is that good. They don't put rice in their burritos and their carne asadas. It's just, there's like a long line, and you're like, it's one of those places in San Francisco that, as a family, imagine this, because I got kids.
Sure.
We will all go sit in the line to get in. Because as a family, you're like, this is a disaster. I'm never getting this. Right? You're like, this is, the kids are bickering, and you're just like, but yeah, it's really good.
Awesome. Last one we pulled from at the lineup pod. We appreciate everyone submitting questions. Is from @Kosuki_Fujikura. Question for Eddie. I think a lot of people really look up to you and think of you as a role model. Was there someone who you looked up to growing up? It is my mom. I had my mom as the North Star, and when you're raised in a single family home, there's there's a lot of things can be challenging, I think, and I'm just so forever and ever and ever impressed that my mother did everything that she did, considering the circumstances. She dealt with me. She ended up getting a double master's in education, raising a kid as a school teacher, it's just everything. And you're just I don't know, yeah, that's forever my hero. As far as a single, one person. But I mentioned this earlier, my heroes are day-to-day people that I know, that I see dedicating their lives to being a parent or being a human, just being a human with boundaries. But as a parent, I have friends, close friends that I have so much respect for based on how I see them operating their lives as it pertains to raising their kids, the sacrifices that are included in that. And I think that's what makes the world go round, is raising quality humans. Well said. And thank you again to everyone that wrote in at the lineup pod. We're now down to our final segment. So this is the lightning round. These are 10 questions for you to answer as quickly as you can.
Okay.
If you could only have one surfboard set up for the rest of your life, single fin, twin fin, thruster, quad bonzer, or finless, which would you choose?
That's super easy. John Pizell is a good friend of mine. He makes a model called the Wildcat, which I've modified into the Eddie Cat. And yeah, everybody should have that board if you're over like 40, because it's got, anyways.
Good answer.
You can see if Pizell will make you one.
I'm texting him right after. I might text him before the episode's over.
You should.
Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Burrito or pizza?
Burrito.
Last book you read?
Oh, I just read, this is going to sound like it's like a beach read, but there's that guy, James Frey, that wrote The Million Little Pieces. So he just put out a book. I can't remember the name of it. I'm so sorry.
That's all right.
But it's about New Bethlehem on the East Coast, which is like I think it's one of the richest towns in the United States, and all the dysfunction that I think he lives there, like actually, and but he wrote a fictional book about it.
Next to Heaven.
Yeah. Yep.
All right,
yeah, I just read it.
Shout out.
Yeah,
to
my
James
wife's
Frey.
reading it right now.
Best surf film ever.
Ooh. God, now you're really getting into it. I'm going to go... why is that so hard? I'm going to go September Sessions.
Ooh.
I love that. I just love... I really like all of Chris's films, but maybe I'm a little biased.
That's a nice one. What is one wave that you never have to go back to?
This is going to sound a little harsh, but Pavones.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
If you only get to surf one wave for the rest of your life and you can dreamcast it, perfect conditions, just you and your buddies, which wave would that be?
How old am I?
Whatever you like.
Well, on my honeymoon, I got to surf bank faults in which is just out there by Conduit.
Mm-hmm.
And I surfed it just me and the owner. And it was insanely good. It was like heavy, but not like, it was like borderline, like death heavy. But it was just me and him. And I was on my honeymoon. So I would repeat that session because they also had like, it's kind of a long story, but they also had, we were the only guests on the island because it was early season.
Right.
And this is years ago. And there was a photographer sitting there just, yeah.
That's a good
So
session.
I really like that wave.
Best person to share a lineup with?
Best person to share a lineup with. One of my favorite people to surf with is one of my best friends, Jeff Johnson. Because it's just not serious. It's just like, but having fun. Like, because that's what it is. Like surfing is just like, let's have fun. Let's not, I get caught up in things too, but like at the end of the day, let's just have some fun. And so my sessions with him are generally really fun.
Worst person to share a lineup with?
Individual?
It could be a character if you don't want to name anyone.
Well, living in Ocean Beach, it's like one of those places where just like anywhere, like people move there and they've lived there for like 5 years or whatever it is. And then they're like, they think they're doing their thing and they're the one,
Right.
So that person, I just recently had an interaction with someone like that. And I'm generally like not free love, but just like, just like stoked in the water, and somebody really bummed me out. And then you find out their story and and you're just like, come on.
It is amazing how universal that is, right? Where it's like the angriest local is the one that's been there maybe a few years, and you're like, what?
Yeah, and the most stoked person is the opposite. Been there like forever, and they're like, yeah, cool, go,
Last one. Finish this sentence. I will next achieve a state of happiness by
seeing my children.
Great answer. Eddie Donnellan, thank you so much for coming on the lineup. This has been a real pleasure. And I encourage everyone to check out the MeWater Foundation. I'm definitely gonna. And I hope you and I get to catch up in person down the track soon. Yeah,
thanks so much. I really appreciate and thanks to YETI for making this happen. Thanks to Baggies. And I hope I did okay.
This was awesome.